I am Kim Mack Rosenberg, and I'm the General Counsel of Children's Health Defense. And I'm pleased to be joined here this morning by Kimberly and Colton Nunley, who are here to share their story about vaccine exemptions. Welcome, Kimberly and Colton.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
So, you live in West Virginia, correct?
That's right.
And West Virginia was in the news recently because your governor, Patrick Morrisey, signed an executive order establishing a religious exemption in West Virginia, which it hadn't had, and removed one state out of the had been five states that didn't have religious exemptions: Connecticut, California, Maine, and New York are the others. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on in the legislature now in West Virginia toward the end of our interview. But I wanted to talk to you about your story about a medical exemption. Can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, we had Colton had some he had adverse reactions to the kindergarten vaccines, and it was more neurological than physical. Um, he when he was younger, his body literally turned red on one side and white on the other, straight down the center. And I know it sounds strange, but that's exactly what happened.
Well, oh my goodness. And our viewers now are seeing a picture of this. I mean, it's startling to see that sharp line
Yeah,
that you
it
can
was
see on his
strange.
face.
His pediatrician had no explanation whatsoever. And as the redness went away, the rash came, and he was covered in a rash from head to toe for at least 2 weeks. Just slathered him up in lotion, but no explanation at all. They had no idea, and I asked specifically if it was related to the vaccines, and they were just acted like that was the craziest idea they'd ever heard. So no. So then when he got his kindergarten vaccines, um, that night his brain got in kind of a loop. Like he thought he had to change his clothes and wash his hands, change his clothes and wash his hands. And when I say he did it over and over, there was no time lapse, but he might walk down the hall and then turn around and go right back. It went on probably 400 or 500 times. I was calling the doctor's office, but they had already closed. So I was calling the ER and begging them to get one of his pediatricians on the phone because there was a couple in the office. And I never got to talk to one that night, but the nurse that called back they said, just take him to the mental health facility in Charlotte because we were in North Carolina at the time. I had known people that had been in that facility, adults that came out traumatized from just being in the facility. There was no way I was taking my little boy over there. No way. So I held him for a while till he like physically got so tired he just crashed. But when he woke up, I tried to sidetrack him, distract him, anything I could to keep him from doing it. But he couldn't help himself. He just couldn't. He would maybe make it 5 minutes in between for the next several days. And it took us a good couple months to get where he could function fully through the day without it. And I took him back to the daycare because I worked full time. That's kind of why we had to get the vaccines in the first place. Homeschool's not always an option when you have to support your family at the same time. So even the daycare let him change his clothes whenever he felt like it. That was part of this, I begged him. We changed all the soap in the house from soap to actual baby lotion. So his hands were getting so red and swollen from all the soap. And he still has sensory issues since then. You'll never catch him in a pair of blue jeans. If I beg him to wear a pair, he's mad.
Colton's nodding over there.
So when we got here, I found out all the stipulations here that you had to go through to get an exemption. So, but I called a group called Frontline Defense, and they walked me through the process, and we had to meet another doctor via Zoom. So we met him several times, and we got The exemption wrote up beautifully. They took all of his medical records. It was 2 pages of medical evidence that we sent in of all the different issues. From his sister had some issues too, so we had them all on there. We send it in to the school. They send it on to county, and then the county sends it on to the state. So we got a letter back from the state saying that it was denied. And I thought, how can you deny an exemption, a medical exemption? You've got all the reasoning right there. It's just irresponsible. Like, I'm not willing to take my child and get the vaccines and just roll the dice. So I started calling people. And I called all the nurses. I called the county first, the Boone County nurse, head of immunology. She said, she was very rude to me. She said, I guess I just care for my children more than you, because I want mine protected. And I was like, well, then you obviously don't understand that I'm protecting mine. I mean, you guys didn't even ask me a single question. She said, well, the paper's pretty thorough, but you need a West Virginia doctor to do that. But you'd have to get a vaccine here and let her see the reaction for her to confirm it. All we have is his past medical records that didn't come from West Virginia. She said, well, that's not acceptable. She said, but I've seen kids outgrow stuff before, so he's probably outgrown it. Just take him and get one at a time and see which
So
one.
she wanted you to take that risk.
I said,
And
it's not a dice game I'm willing to play.
And they never met Colton. They never had a doctor examine Colton.
Never asked me a single question. Never spoke to me. Just denied it. So I went above her, and I called the state superintendent, Bob Wise, and he was very apologetic for the way the nurse talked to me and said, let's take a look at it. We'll pull all your paperwork, and I'll get with our state immunologist, and I'll have her call you. She called me. She called me all right. She was not any better than the first nurse. She told me, you should go around West Virginia and look at some of these cemeteries and check out some of these child tombstones and see the kids that died of measles already, and then tell me how you're going to feel when your child dies. I couldn't believe she said it to me.
I'm in a state of shock, Kimberly. That's a terrible thing to tell a parent.
Exactly what she said. Exactly. I was stunned. I couldn't believe she had told it. She said, well, the people that helped you get the federal exemption, they scammed you. They don't know. No federal exemption trumps a state exemption. I said, from everything I've read, and I've read a lot, and I've read the West Virginia state law multiple times, federal trumps, as long as the stipulations are less than. Like, if West Virginia's rules were stronger than the state, then they could make you uphold the stronger rule. But that's not the case. But they refused to acknowledge his exemption at all and said I needed West Virginia doctor. So I took him to the West Virginia pediatrician. She came in, she said, I see your records. I see the past, and I can say something about reading your records, but I can't say anything for seeing them myself. And I said, well, I'm going to guess just me walking him through this door unvaccinated means you've already lost your bonus. Am I right? She said, that's exactly right. She said,
so she was honest with you, at least.
Yep.
And you had an exemption for him in North Carolina, where you lived before West Virginia, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And West Virginia just refused to acknowledge his reaction.
Any other doctor besides the West Virginia doctor.
And I'll tell you, I lived in New York. I lived in New York for a long time, and same in New York. They want a New York doctor.
Well, she said, I'll tell you right now, they don't listen to us. Like, it's not, I'll do it, but it's not going to do you any good. So I started calling again. I wrote letters to the Governor Morrisey. I wrote letters to RFK. I think that's how I ended up here.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote I went to the Senate committee meeting last week, and they did vote for the religious exemption as an amendment to the law, which is great. We'll have to go that route. I kind of hate that I have to go that route because I shouldn't have to. The medical should be enough, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. How can you give one exemption for what you believe to be true and one for medical written proof and say no to it? I didn't understand that. So I'm going to pursue this with, I got with a great group of women from the West Virginians for health freedom. And I'm going to do anything I can to support them. The bill has one more vote this Friday, and if it passes, it'll move up to the House. So hopefully it'll get passed.
And then that gives it more strength than just having the executive order from the governor, correct? If it becomes law, it becomes codified.
Yeah, the governor's order can be changed with the next governor. If we get it as a law, it won't be able to be changed.
Or not as easily, certainly. And that would be terrific for West Virginia to have that as a law. You'd said you got a lot of support from other women in the community. Can you talk about, we just showed the one organization, but can you talk about resources that are available for West Virginian families?
There's not a lot of resources. You have to find out. I went to I went to the Facebook website for the West Virginians for Health, and it's a small world. You don't realize, but I started individualizing women around the town that I had actually grown up with one. And then I found out there was another family that had a senior. Apparently they're requiring an 11th grade vaccine now, and they won't let her graduate without it. And they were at the committee meeting. So I've met people along the way that have had the same struggle, but they've actually had to take their kids out and homeschool them. So there's a homeschool group that you can get with, and they work together, and it's really great. But if you have to work, which was the case when he was younger, our situation's changed a little now because I moved here to be with him more. It's different. But as for the state, they treat you like you're infected just because you're not vaccinated. I was told, I made a comment under the Governor Morsi's introduction about, I hope he would take a look at the law. And I got several reactions to keep your kid out of school with mine. Mine's vaccinated. I don't want yours nowhere near mine. I'm like, yours has been injected with a virus. Mine has not. He's not a carrier just because he's not vaccinated. It's right. Like they don't even understand. They don't even understand. Don't even want to understand.
There's very much a misconception that if you're unvaccinated, somehow you're a vector for all these diseases, right? And you're just carrying them all around to spread them around. Yeah. It really is. People don't understand. And
it's almost like they're all reading out of the same script, because those two different nurses that I had to deal with, the county and the state, it's like verbatim. They said the same things. And then I realized, I said, they're calling ahead of me and warning the next person about me. Because when I call, they're like, "Oh, it's you." Yeah, it's me. But that's okay with me.
Sort of goes along with the wall art that you have behind you, faith over fear, right? And a lot of this that you're seeing is fear-based from the people you're talking to.
And they believe that. I mean, the parents, they really believe that because that's all they read around here. Even in the committee meeting, the Senate committee meeting, some of the senators were talking like the vaccines were 100% foolproof, and there was no injuries and they were safe. And the few that had injuries, it was almost like it was worth the sacrifice to them. But to tell me you're denied an exemption, you have to take your child in that doctor's office, walk him in there and let him inject, knowing it's going to for the greater good of the crowd. I don't see it that way.
Right.
And
They want you to risk your child who you know to have had a reaction in the past with something that is not 100% foolproof. It's not 100% effective. It's not 100% safe. What is Colton's school situation now?
Well, he's still in school. You're allowed to stay in school while you appeal. So as long as if we won the appeal, he could stay in. But if we lost the appeal, he wouldn't even be able to play soccer this summer. So as soon as the school year's done, as far as they're concerned, he's done. He can't come back. But now that there's a religious exemption, I can go that route, and I guess apparently all you have to do is email a letter saying that you don't believe in injecting fetal DNA into your child, and they'll give you the exemption. So we're going to go that route, but I'm still going to appeal because I want our case to be heard, because I think those nurses are used to speaking to people that way because they've gotten by with it, and they think it's okay to use intimidation and emotional harassment, more or less, to make people do what they want. Because both of them told me, just take him and get him. He's probably outgrown it. Like, take the risk. You go take the risk. Whose liability does that come back on when he's hurt? Who would answer for that? I would, because I walked him in there, and I'm
right.
not.
And you'd have to take care, you and your family would have to take care of him if they're not going to take care of him. That's the bottom line. They have no liability. And and thank you for doing what you're doing and for fighting that appeal, because while religious exemptions and philosophical exemptions are a wonderful thing for people who can legitimately exercise and have those beliefs, there are
Right.
people for whom medical exemption may be the only route. And we hear often, oh, well, they still have a medical exemption. But we know from your story and other stories we hear that those medical exemptions are very, very difficult to
And
obtain,
it
even
shouldn't
with
be.
very strong evidence. And you have very strong evidence from doctors who know Colton and who have
Mhm.
treated him and who have seen what happened to him. And to have someone just reject that out of hand, it must be very, very
It just seems
trying.
irresponsible. I mean, if my child took a baseball bat to school and beat up that nurse's car, who would be responsible for that? Who would they come back and say, you need to pay for that? That was your kid. You did that. But I'm not responsible enough to decide whether my child should have a vaccine or not that I know has already hurt him. I mean, they're giving women the right to decide whether their unborn child can be born or not, but I can't decide what vaccine gets shot into my child. It seems the system is just broken. It's broken, and those nurses, they don't need to be speaking to parents. Just because you don't feel the way they feel does not mean they're invalid, and you shouldn't be talking to people like that. I don't care. I'm a little stronger than a lot of moms. I think I can take a little more without being upset. So I don't want them talking to anyone else the way they talk to me.
Well, thank you very much, not only for standing up for Colton and your family, but for bringing this issue to the attention of other people and giving other people the strength to speak up. Kimberly and Colton Nunley, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. We really appreciate you. Give you a thumbs up too.
Thank you. Thanks for
Um,
having us.